Hi Taylor, it's David. I hope it's okay if I answer via video. It's easier and faster for me, and I also will provide fuller answers because I don't have to type everything out. This is the first time I'm looking at your questions, so it's my earnest, honest first reactions. And if you have any more questions, just send them my way. Can you tell me a little bit about your story? What kind of background do you come from? Where did you go to school, journalism school? What was your career path, and what led you to Circa? Sure. So my personal story. Um, I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad. I did philosophy and rhetoric, which are both useless. And then after college, I started out as a freelance writer, and I did a lot of technology reporting, most notably for Wired. So I was a technology reporter for like Wired and Seed Magazine and different things like that. And then I went to grad school for journalism at Columbia, and while I was at Columbia, I worked for a guy named Jay Rosen, who's a professor at NYU, and also Jeff Jarvis at CUNY. And for Jay, I did a lot of what I would call like experimental projects. So we sort of did projects in crowdsourced journalism, or what might now be called distributed reporting, things like that. This idea of like lots of people do little bits of reporting and have that add up to a full story. From there, I started something called Spot Us, which was kind of like a Kickstarter for journalism before Kickstarter had launched. And it basically would raise money for independent journalists. So 50 people giving $20 each would be enough to then hire a reporter to do that investigation. Um, and then that is now owned by American Public Media. And as I left Spot Us after about 4 years, I was sort of looking for something new to do. I knew I wanted it to be something different, something that continues to sort of push the boundaries of journalism. And this was the same time that Circa was looking for their sort of first editorial hire. And so basically we were introduced and we started talking, and we had similar visions and ideas and sort of ethos about where things could go. Um, so that leads a little bit, it looks like, to your second question. What is the history of Circa? Do you know how the idea was thought of? Can you briefly go into where the funding came from and how that came about? How long have you been there, and what was your general experience been like? So the history behind Circa, it actually started out with a guy named Ben Huh, who's the owner of I Can Has Cheeseburger. So if you've ever seen those like websites where like cats make funny captions, that's Ben Huh. And he actually has a background in journalism, and it was during the Japanese tsunami of 2011, and he was trying to sort of like follow the story, and he noticed that every day he'd have to read a new article, and the articles would kind of repeat themselves instead of sort of respecting the information he already had. And his main problem was this idea of like the vehicle of the article, is that outdated? That was his main question. And Matt Galligan, the CEO, sort of ended up coming in and taking it from there. Ben and him got together. Ben is more like an advisor. He's not really involved in the day to day. And Matt started playing with the idea near the end of 2011, and then by early 2012 is when it really started forming as a company. And that's when he brought in Arsenio, the CTO. I came in about March, in April, I think, of 2012, and we launched in October of 2012. So we're about a year. We're a year old publicly, um, and the funding has come from angel investors. So Ben Ha, I mentioned, is one of them. David Karp, the founder of Tumblr, Dave Morin, one of the early guys at Facebook, who's now the founder of Path, some guys from Techstars, a guy named David Cohen, of no relation to me, and other kinds of things. But it's all angel investors, people that sort of see the vision and wanted to invest in it. How long have I been there? Again, since last April, and the experience has been great. I've been having a blast. It's a lot of work, obviously, but having a lot of fun with it. It's a unique challenge. What is the idea of breaking up news into short snippets? How does this reflect the broader trend of what media has become? Is there still a place for long-form journalism, and how is the shift from desktop to mobile aided in the way you guys think at Circa? So the idea behind breaking news up into short snippets is really trying to rethink, well, what is news, right? Because in order for news to exist, it feels like it has to be contained in this article, right? An article, 500 words or however many words, is a container for news. And we kind of wanted to step back and say, well, the actual news is just a fact. or a quote or a statistic or an event. It's like these elements. And in fact, for a lot of stories, right, stories are different. Stories are comprised of these atomic units or snippets. They exist for a long period of time, right? Stories continue for long periods of time. And whenever there's news about it, everybody has to write new articles. And so, again, the Japanese tsunami, people are still writing about, the after effects of it, right? The Fukushima nuclear power plant still has issues, and we actually have a story about that. And it's like when there's news about it, we don't have to write a new article. We write a new, as you call them, snippets, and we insert it, and then that way we can keep track of what a reader has or hasn't read, which snippets they have or haven't read, and we can respect their context, the information they already have. So do I think there's still a place for long-form journalism? Absolutely. Not necessarily on Circa, just like, there are certain news organizations that do long form and certain ones that don't. But I still think there is a place for it. There will always be a place for that sort of, long narrative, 2,000 word article that paints scenes and things like that. We just don't do that. Because just as I'm sure if you were to ask the New Yorker, is there still a place for breaking news? They'd say, of course. We're just not going to do it. So, the more the merrier. How is this shift from desktop to mobile? The shift to mobile has been, obviously good for us. I mean, we sort of started thinking about mobile, and we don't even think of ourselves necessarily as mobile as in devices, but as a mobile lifestyle. And that includes everything from like, anytime someone is on the go, that includes potential wearables, wearable technology, things like Google Glass or watches down the line, etc. And I think that trend will continue. Essentially, you guys are somewhat like Twitter without all the noise, delivering news to the people who follow it. Would you agree with that statement? To some, I mean, that's a fair way of, I guess, describing us. I mean, Twitter is an open platform, so obviously, I don't know the number. There's hundreds of millions of people on Twitter. Circa is a closed platform. Just the editors are the ones that contribute to the content that you see. We could, in theory, open that up wider down the line. But to some degree, it is like Twitter in that we create these stories and you can follow a story, just like you can follow a person on Twitter. And we've even seen stories on Twitter, right? Where people sort of use Twitter to tell a story over time and people follow it. We're kind of doing that all the time. How does a story on Circa start? Do you guys create your own content or simply pull snippets of stories from other outlets to be through the editorial process? So we do create all of our own content. We have an editorial team of 12 people around the world working 24/7. We're scouring the web for all kinds of different story ideas and things that we think are interesting, and then we write those snippets. And when we see new news that happens, we say, oh, is this an update to one of our old snippets, or is this an update to one of our older stories, right, to update it, or is this a new story? And of course, we make sure that the stories are all related through bridges and things like that. I mean, it's sort of a longer editorial process and can kind of quickly be described, but it is all done in-house. The only things that we ever pull from other stories are quotes, because they're quotes, and it would be weird if we changed them. Next question. What, if any, is the business model? Is there a plan to, at this moment, to integrate any sort of advertising into the platform? I've read that there have been thoughts about selling the back end of the app to other news organizations, so CNN could have a CNN Circa, essentially. Can you speak to that at all? Advertising is one way that we've discussed making money. Right now, we're completely angel funded, so there's no ads. It's a free app. Advertising, we would probably not do banner ads. We would probably do what's called social advertising or native advertising, which is to say the advertising content would be transparent, but it would behave similar to these stories. So it would be these snippets that you could subscribe to an advertising story over, and you'd be updated over time. As far as selling the back end, I think licensing might be the more appropriate term. We do have a unique content management system that does things that I think no other CMS can do. And if other news organizations were interested in this idea of being able to follow stories as just one of the many features that are part of the CMS, that's something that we could do as well. We haven't done that or even started those conversations yet, but it's possible. What success have you seen? What challenges have you encountered? And what challenges are you facing currently? We've seen lots of success. People like to follow, on breaking news stories, for example, just the last week, the shooting at Capitol Hill. About 20, actually, it might have been higher. I think it was like 38% of people that read that story followed it. It's somewhere between 25 and 38%. But like on breaking stories, Boston, it was 25%. And so that means that we create a relationship with those people over time. So as the story evolves, they'll come back and they trust us to sort of, stick with us with the story. Challenges, the same challenges that any startup faces, really. We have to grow, we have to, continue to market ourselves and things like that. We haven't really done all of our marketing and all of our growth so far has been purely organic. That is, I think, a testament to how good we're doing, but also a challenge. Where do you see the future of Circa and most importantly the future of journalism? I wouldn't try and answer the question of the future of journalism. That's a really tough one to answer. I will say this. Increasingly, I think technology companies are media companies, and so I think media companies have to become technology companies to some degree. And I think the future of Circa is, we are half a mobile company, half a technology company, half a media company, and I sort of represent the media half of it in this conversation. I think that there's a really fine future for the right blending of those two. So it looks like those are all your questions. Again, if you have any more, let me know. I'm happy to answer. Okay. Have a good day.